Welcome to the Play Skillfully podcast. This is so fun having video. So, this is new, adding video to our podcast. We've mostly done only audio. So, if you are interested in seeing what a hot mess we are in reality, you should check out our YouTube, the Homegrown Preschooler or Kathy Eggers, and see if you can find us there because sometimes it's fun to see the video and it's not as easy to edit that. So, you get all the goof ups or our animals in the background or all the things. So, welcome. Today, we are here with one of my darling friends. Like, it's crazy. This young lady I met at a conference about 10 years ago, and now I work with her. I hang out with her. I adore her. And it's so special to have her here with us. So Rachel Ryder, homeschool mom, 2 girls. Chloe is 12, Kinsey is 9. I always reverse that. So if I call them the wrong names, I hope they forgive me. I often call my kids the dog's names and vice versa. Rachel is not only, though, a homeschooling mom. So she's got experience doing that. But what she's decided to do is take that love that she's learned in helping others, because she is an Enneagram 2, if you're into that. I know that about her. So she is a coach naturally and counselor. She has decided to become a career and homeschool coach. And I actually hired her myself as a business development person to help me. So I can vouch for her in this role. So we're going to talk today about deciding to homeschool. And if you're overwhelmed with that decision, how do you get started and the resources? So welcome, Rachel, to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Kathy. It is an honor to be here. As you said, we've been friends for a long time, but you've also been very impactful in how I parent, not just in how I homeschool, but who I am as a mother. So I am delighted to be here with you.
It's so fun. It's so fun to see you parent over these years, and our other dear friend, mutual friend, Carrie Bosick, and to watch you with your children. Like, I get such joy out of that. So thank you for letting me peek into your world with your family. I think that's fun.
Sure.
So let's start off talking about, hey, even deciding to homeschool. Why did you decide to homeschool?
Yeah. So I think it's a good question to ask, because the first thing you hear when people start talking about homeschool is either I could never do that, or that just sounds so overwhelming, right? And I've been there too. And so I always tell people, you just start with your why. I know that that's a big buzzword in the culture right now, is what's your why, what's your vision? But it is true. Understanding why you want to homeschool, what the drive is. For me, it was more about when my oldest, when Chloe was little, I had all these friends that started sending their kids to preschool and kindergarten, and they would be gone for 5, 6, 8 hours a day. And I just had this ache. I don't want to be apart from my kids that long. And I had a friend mention her kid at, I think, 7. She said it was like he had a 40-hour week job because of how long he was gone and out of the house. And that just really struck me. I wanted to be around my kids. And then I was very fortunate to be in a place outside Houston that had a great homeschool community. So I feel very fortunate. I know everybody doesn't have that, but I had a community that was able to walk with me and show me. I wasn't a lone person in a city trying to homeschool. So I kind of had a built-in community and other people around me doing it. But it started out, I wanted to be around my kids. As they've grown and my homeschool has grown, it's a lot more about, I personally am not running from a system that I think doesn't work, but I do think our education system in this country should be better than it is. And I like being able to lean into my kids' interests. When a few years ago, when one of my kids just was into fairies, we did fairy school, and that means everything we did was fairy related. And still, it is one of her favorite years. So it's a long way to say, for me, it was just an ache to be around my kids, because I know they're not in my house for very long. They really aren't. And then wanting to learn and grow with them and be a part of it.
I love that. I had a similar experience. I don't know if I've shared with you, but when John Michael, my first child, it's hard to say oldest because I adopted all out of birth order, but my first child, I decided to put him in preschool at a local church, and we went, and I dropped him off and went back to my car and sat there and started bawling, and probably sat there for 15 minutes and thought, what am I doing? Okay, not only do I not want to be away from my child, I'm a freaking child development specialist. Like I know the stuff that this kid should be doing.
Yeah.
And I think that it's so fun just to be a mom. I long to be a
Mhm.
mom. And so when I finally got to adopt John Michael at 9 months, he was my first kid, it made no sense to me. So I marched right back into that preschool. 15 minutes later, took him out, and he never went back. So
Yeah.
that was our only preschool experience. But it felt so right for me too. I mean,
Mhm.
very similar to you. Most of my kids are adopted. If you know my story, I mean, you know my story, but
Oh,
if
yeah.
listeners know my story, most of my kids are adopted. And for me, it had that angle as well. I wanted to make sure I
Mhm.
could meet their developmental needs because everyone came with some trauma and different backgrounds. And so I
Yeah.
wanted to be able to kind of design our school to meet their social emotional needs as well as their academic needs. So I think you're so right. You've got to ask yourself, all right, what is the reason? We were in Texas together this past weekend and we met a mom that came up and talked to us. And gosh, it was heartbreaking. And I think Carrie talked to her as well. Her son was dyslexic
Mm.
and he was in third grade and she was going to finally pull him out because meeting after meeting with the teachers and the child would come home sobbing. He would beg not to go to school. He said, I hate learning. I'm dumb. I can't
Mhm.
do this, all the things. And the mom is telling me the story through tears. And so she did make the decision to homeschool. And she was a nervous wreck. She's like, I
Mhm.
don't even know what to do. So I actually encouraged her to start with a year of playing. I said, if I were you,
Mhm.
and I know it's hard to think at the third grade, we're going to do this. I said, but I would put away the textbook and I would go on field trips and I would explore and I would just get to know your child, read
Mhm.
books, see what they're interested
Yeah.
in, just build a love for being back together and for learning. And you could just literally see the weight falling off of her. She was so
Yeah.
thankful for such simple advice. What would you say to someone in that situation?
Yeah. It's it's the thing you come up against the most is where somebody's just like, I'm at this crossroads and it's almost like what I'm doing is not working. I want to try this other thing, but I don't know how. I think you're exactly right. Let me say this. When I first started homeschooling, I had my little four-year old, and I say homeschooling, we were just playing, and I was trying to do school at home, and I asked a friend of mine who had been homeschooling for years and years. Like her oldest was at the Colorado School of Mines, and she was about to have a kid, like go to Harvard or something. And I said, "What do I do?" And she goes, "You don't do anything till fifth grade. Don't open a curriculum. Don't just read." And play and figure out what they're interested in. And I was like, that doesn't work for me. I love a structure. I love a plan. But she told me that, and I always had that in the back of my mind that kids will learn. I'm not saying don't do anything. I'm not saying don't be invested in their education, but you don't have to live and die by it. So just saying, like, if your instinct as a mom is of what we're doing in school is not working, bring them home, go to the library once a week. I used to laugh when somebody told me, bring a wagon. We go to the library, my kids pick out every single book they even think they might be interested in. We do that once a week. Just read and play. And you will be surprised how much that does. Even with my kid, I have one that's going to be going into seventh grade, one that's be going into fourth. And the thing we do the most is we play games together. And
I love it.
yeah. So I think just taking that pressure off, and let me just tell you, what I would say to that mom is like, first you have to remember, homeschooling is not school at home. It is being at home doing school, and that
Yes.
that is a big difference, and that takes a lot of that pressure off to recreate a classroom at home.
Correct. And I think that's the biggest thing is when I talk to parents, they're like, I don't know, do I need a schoolroom? Like, I do I need to follow the same schedule that they would in school? And I'm like, hold on. We
Yeah.
don't need to make our model the public school education.
Right.
I mean, again, I am not here to bash it. I'm not the one. I'm not the girl who dies on the hill of you must homeschool if you
Right.
want. I'm not. I will tell you, you've got to do what's best for each child. And
Right.
some kids, it might be best to be in school while another child is at home. The thing I'm going to tell you is you know your child
Mhm.
and you've got to pay attention to, or you should know your child by paying attention to your child and seeing what's going on with them beyond academically. But why would we want to recreate something that we're trying to go away from?
Yeah.
So you have the opportunity to have a blank slate
Mhm.
and start fresh. So where should you start? What do you think?
I think you start with your why. I know we already said that. Why do you want to homeschool? Because there are days where I'm like, I don't know what I was thinking. the past 12 years were a mistake. And I go, oh no, this is why I'm doing this. And that doesn't change when my kid doesn't want to do math, or they're struggling with something, or I'm sick of doing science. It doesn't change that I want to spend time with my kids. So you start with your why. You find support. I can't say that enough. If you want to homeschool, find somebody who will sit with you and say, this is how you homeschool. This is why I coach homeschool parents, is because sometimes you just need to ask someone, tell me some nitty gritty, help me figure this out. So find out your why, find people that are doing this that you can sit and talk to and watch. And then I don't knock curriculums. I did start using a curriculum before my kids were in 5th grade, but there's so much out there. Just figure out kind of what works for you. And this sounds harder than it is, so I almost hate to say it, but even kind of going, do I like doing worksheets? Do I like watching videos and then responding to them? And I say if you're starting out, you have to figure out, I do believe you start with what works for mama. I hate reading this story of the world? And this is, everybody loved story of the world. And I was like, I can't do it. And so I was like, oh, I don't do it. I start with, what do I like to do? And then from there, I start working in, okay, I like worksheets. This kid doesn't like worksheets. We're going to find something different. But start with what's easy. Does that make sense? Or does that sound too nebulous?
It does. Okay. No, I think it's great. And I think also, find some resources that help you. I know Kathy Cook, Dr. Kathy Cook has a book called 8 Great Smarts. I love that book because what it helps us realize is that every child is smart. We're all smart. It just looks different. And sometimes as parents, we know how we learn. Like we might be an audio learner, but we might have a kid who's a visual learner, which is what you're saying. Or you might have a kid who learns through the arts, or we might have a kid who's a physical learner. And so I think by reading some resources or getting your hand on some resources that help us see, oh, wait, other people learn this way. My kid might learn this way. They might need it. And different kids will need different things. And so just arming yourself with some of those good resources, like some great books. And Dr. Kathy Cook is one of my favorites. I think she has some great resources out there to help parents in those early days of homeschooling and parenting. What are some other resources that you have found that have kind of helped you as you've been navigating homeschooling?
Okay, first of all, you're going to think that I'm just like trying to plug and like be a Kathy disciple, but Year of Playing Skillfully is a great place to start, especially if you've got kids that I'd say are elementary and younger. I had somebody ask me, hey, since your kids are older, would you be willing to part with your Year of Playing Skillfully? And I was like, we still use it when I just need ideas. And I'm like, so it's a great thing because it's a curriculum, I'd say, but it just has ideas. Like, here's some things I want to do 5 of these for the month of May. And so I think that's a great resource, especially if younger kids. I am a big proponent.
Thank you for the plug.
Oh, you're welcome.
I didn't ask for it. But yeah.
I'm a big proponent of get yourself to a conference if you can.
Yes.
Because then, especially if you're starting out, you can look and you can flip through and you can, it is one of my favorite ways to be exposed to a lot of different curriculum in one place. And so I say get to a conference if you can. I want to say this. I recognize homeschooling can be a luxury. There are some people who cannot get to a conference. There's some people who work and can't just pull their kids out or live in a state where it's not that easy. I recognize that. But finding other homeschoolers is your next best resource.
I would agree. And I remember sorry to interrupt, Rachel. Yeah. I was going to say, I remember my first conference I went to. I mean, I think John Michael was maybe 4. John Michael's almost 30 now. And I went with a group of women from my church, and it was Sally Clarkson. But that conference did 2 things for me. Number one, I was with all these women that I could go to dinner with that had older children, and they could tell me how it was. So it took some of the fear out to say, okay, these women aren't crazy. They're not even that weird. Other kids seem normal. And then when I listened to Sally, and it's funny now, years later, being a speaker too, but I remember being so intrigued by her relationship with her kids, nothing to do with the academics. In fact, I couldn't even tell you one thing she said about the academics of homeschooling, but what I remember her telling us 20-something years ago, almost 30 years ago now, was how she had tea time with her kids, and she would invite them in for tea time and that special one-on-one time, and the way she connected with them. And so I remember that putting me at ease too, of thinking, okay, wait, this isn't all about math and reading
Yeah.
and science. This is also about being intentional with our children from the get go. And I think that helped me kind of lay that foundation. So I think conferences are so important because you might find a role model, a mentor in your speaker. And I definitely have followed her over the years and
Yeah.
seen as her relationship with her children have developed and they're now adults.
Mm.
And I think that's so encouraging to me. And so I think that's important about a conference too. Go listen to the speakers and you
Mhm.
might not agree with them. And even in the disagreeing, because I even still will go attend sessions when I'm speaking at a
Mhm.
conference. If I have free time, I like to go in and sit and listen to other speakers and what they're sharing. And sometimes I don't agree with them. I just don't. And that's okay. And I bet sometimes they won't agree with me. But if you go to multiple conferences or even one and hear multiple speakers, you are most likely to find at least one that you can call on as a mentor,
Mhm.
even if it's following them on social media, buying their materials, whatever, but they will speak to you. And then if you're doing it with a group of other people,
Mhm.
then you can start building a tribe. And that tribe is what you're going to need to support you throughout those
Yeah.
tough times. Because let me tell you, there are days my kids said, "Oh, I wish I could get on the yellow bus." And I'm like,
Uh-huh.
"Oh, I really wish you could too." Right? Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
What else would you
Um,
say?
I really like, okay, so this is going to sound super obvious, but there have been times where I'm like, this is not working for me. I'm going to Google a unit study on fairies. I'm going to Google science videos about tornadoes. Um, Sometimes you just need to like, I'm telling you, if you think of it, somebody's done it. And you just kind of, it's like you said, it's like finding the speaker that works for you. There are so many people that post resources online. Use them.
Yes.
Pick a little here, pick a little there. The other, as far as like a resource that I say check out, I am a big believer. I love Pam Barnhill and the My Morning
Yes.
Basket, her group. The idea of having a time where you pick 4 or 5 components that are really important that you all do together. That is what I build my homeschool around, because it's important to me that we spend time together. It's important to me that we don't hate each other at the end of it. And let me tell you, there are days, it's like you said, I think we have to be honest that it is not all sunshine and roses and playing in the dirt. It is hard. And there's so many days where I don't want to do it. But I can say, okay, we're going to come together and we're going to do our morning time that we do together. We're going to draw a little, we're going to talk. And so she's a really good resource that I recommend people check out if they're looking for the how do I homeschool, or what does it like technically look like. Yeah. Sally Clarkson's another good one. She's somebody who her
Yes.
kids are grown, and she will tell you it's almost scary to me. God will not, she's a big believer that God will not let your kids be derailed because of you. So if your kid is interested in going to Juilliard or doing instruments and you don't introduce them to an instrument till they're 17, which I think was her story, they're still going to get to Juilliard. So I've learned to like, oh yeah, these are my kids and I know what's best for them, but they have their own lives and they're going to learn and go in the way that they're going to go. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and we're not going to get it all right. Let's
No.
be honest. I
Hmm.
mean, I think I look back now and do wonder if some of my kids would not have been better off in a different school
Sure.
setting. I
Sure.
can be honest enough to say that now. I think a lot of
Mm.
them, it was the best thing for them. But there were a couple that I think, you know what, I think they would have thrived in
Yeah.
a public school setting. We're not going to get it perfect.
Hmm.
But what we can do is we can pay attention. We can try and adjust and be flexible. And what I heard you say, I love that you said the fairies, that your daughter wanted to do
Hmm.
fairies. So you looked that up and you did it, or tornadoes.
Hmm.
I remember John Michael being so interested in inventions. And so we went and found out every inventor, and he was so obsessed with inventors. That is the key to helping them figure out if they need to go to Juilliard, is paying attention and then
Yeah.
being flexible enough to change the plan. And
Yeah.
so that to me is probably one of the number one things we can do. I know we both offer resources. Again, not
Hmm.
trying to be a commercial, but
Oh.
I've just started because over the years, as I speak
Mhm.
to parents, I have so many that want to dive into a deeper conversation with me and get my advice
Yeah.
on things. It's just kind of hard to do it. So we have decided in the website to offer conversations with Kathy. So you can book a time with me. What I love about that, not trying to book a time with me, but just so it helps me give some one on
Yeah.
one personal attention to these moms. But I am not a coach, don't want to be a coach. And I love that you are doing coaching. So that's two resources that if people really don't know what to do and they're listening to this and they're like, man, I really connect with what Rachel's saying, they can find you where, Rachel?
Yeah.
Just
Um,
as a quick, like, where can they find you to book that coaching
yeah.
session?
The best way to do it is my website. It's Ryder Group, RYDERGROUP.com/coaching. And that is the
Awesome.
best way. And you can book a discovery session with me. And I appreciate you um, bringing that back, because what I want, my heart behind homeschool coaching, and this is the way I do it, is I'm a coach anyway. I have my master's certification. This is what I do. But I really have a heart for homeschooling. And I remember when I started out, I just wanted somebody to invite me over and let me watch them sit and do homeschool. And I just wanted somebody to
Yes.
brainstorm with me and help me weed through all the noise. And so that's what a coach does for you. If you wonder, like, what is coaching like? And, are you going to put me on a 12-step plan or anything like that? Coaching is so much about just having somebody guide you with what's already going on in your brain. And that's what I want to do for people.
I love that. And I think it's so necessary. I think coaching is kind of a buzz thing right now. So many
Mhm.
people are turning to coaching. And I love that in the homeschool community, we have that to offer people
Yeah.
as well. I think that's so important. I want to talk about some other resources that, especially if you have young children. And this
Mhm.
is one that's not thought of as an automatic resource, but it's an organization called naeyc.org. And they're the National Association for the Education of Young Children. And so, as a child development specialist, I've done a lot of work with them over the years. I've been a mentor with them, I've validated with them, I've spoken at their national conferences internationally and all over. What I love about their organization is they will give you the ages and stages
Mhm.
of children. Like, you can go there and find articles on play. You can find articles on, is this developmentally appropriate for my toddler, my preschooler, my
Right.
early elementary? They have book after book after book on any subjects you could want. So if you really are into brain development or just even the social emotional part of it, it's a fabulous resource. They have a magazine called Young Children. Now, a lot of
Mm.
that is geared to children, like in a child development center, but so much of it can be applied to parents as well. Just getting to
Yeah.
understand more of what's expected of an age group. I think often we have unrealistic expectations with our kids. We kind of go after what I want to say that the education system in the US has deemed
Yeah.
as the right timeline,
Mhm.
and in reality, it just isn't accurate. There's so many things. For example, we expect 5-year-olds to read in the US. I know so many parents have come to me and said, hey, wait, my kid was put in remedial reading at Christmas because they weren't reading well
Yeah.
at 5 in kindergarten, and they were devastated.
Yeah.
And I'm like, whoa, bring that back. Like, they and AUIC will help you understand that the brain really isn't ready to receive reading with ease until 7 or 8, not 5.
Yeah.
But the damage we are doing to children socially and emotionally, trying to get them to reach unrealistic academic expectations, is huge.
Yeah.
So, an organization like NAEYC is a great resource as well. I want to mention that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it makes me think, another thing that I do think is important if you want to homeschool, besides I'll keep coming back to, you just have to remember why you want to homeschool, is looking at something like
So
that
true.
as a resource, or Googling, like, I think it's a great place to start to go, okay, what are fifth graders across, like, what's the expectation? What is the NAEYC recommend? And then you look at that and you go, oh, they're supposed to know this in math, kind of, this is on track. And then go, well, what do I think we can do? And set some goals. And my kids are older now, so I can say, okay, we're going to come up with 3 goals. I'm a big proponent of keep your goals small, like 3 goals.
Yeah.
And so I had asked my oldest at the beginning of her 6th grade year, what's your goal for math? What are, like, 3 things you want to learn? And she said, I just want to get through a third of the book. And I was like, you know what? We can do that. That is realistic. And
Yeah.
so for her, that was success. And I'm aware of what, the public schools doing, the private schools are doing, where they expect their 6th graders to be. And we sprinkle some of that in, but it's more about making her feel accomplished. So having something where you can say, what are some standards that are maybe more science-based, I should say, such as it's okay if they don't start reading till they're 9 or 11, like my kid did. That's really great. So that what are my goals that I'm working towards?
Correct. And I think remembering keeping it that it's progress,
Mhm.
not perfection. This
Yeah.
is a marathon. We have a lot of time to get this information in. And if we're comparing it to school system, we have to take into account how much time they spend repeating the end of last year at the beginning of the next year,
Mhm.
how much time they cut off because they're prepping for test. So we don't have to keep up with that. And if they know more at the end of the year than they did at the beginning of the year, then we are moving
Yes.
forward and we are moving towards that goal. And if we can help kids be self-starters in their learning,
Yeah.
they will surpass most every expectation we set for them. Because
Yep.
if we can do that, self-starters and a love. But if we miss the love for learning and it just becomes a chore for us all,
Mhm.
then I feel like we've missed one of the benefits and the beautiful pieces of homeschooling if we
Yeah.
miss that part.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I think, and I started with this foundation because of knowing you about play. But kids, we have to remember, we as people are made to learn. You just do it. You learn to read, and if you see a word, you can't not read it. Your brain wants to take in information. And like I share this, my daughter and I fight about her writing assignments constantly. It is just, I'm like, forget it. I don't care if you can write. Fine. And she journals on her own.
Penmanship or creative writing?
No, creative write, any of it. She
Okay.
doesn't want to do any of it. Give me 2 sentences about what you dreamed about last night, and she'll sit there for an hour and a half. She doesn't want to do it.
Okay.
But on her own, she journals. Find pages and pages and pages of her just writing out her feelings and things like that. So I say that to say, kids will learn. They will do these things. You be a little bit intentional and do what works for your family. But remember, kids are learners. Like they're gonna absorb things.
They are. And I think again goes back to I keep noticing you're talking about out of the box way of learning.
Yeah.
Right? You just
Right.
keep saying that. And I think that is so key. Don't expect maybe it to look like 2 sentences, even if you do what we dreamed about last night.
Mhm.
Did you journal today? Do you
Right.
mind if I take a peek? I will respect that, but let me just take a peek. Do you mind if you pull out 2 of the sentences that you journaled about and we can look on sentence structure?
Mhm.
Take
Yeah.
advantage of what's already there. You don't have to, again, doesn't have to be, let me write Psalms 1:1 every day for a week,
Right.
or it doesn't have to look like that. It can be out of the box.
Mhm.
Any
Yeah.
other resources before we wrap this up that you can think were helpful to you or that you would recommend? I know we've got some fun Instagram people we both follow. Mary Van Geffen is
Mhm.
great for those of you who have what she labels your spicier children.
Mhm.
I think God always gives us at least one spicy child to keep us humble.
Yep.
I might have multiple, but she's a great resource. You can find her. She has parenting classes you can take for your
Yep.
spicy children. I like LR Nost. I think she's a
Mhm.
great resource just for to remember the heart of parenting and how
Yeah.
much our parenting does impact our children aside from homeschooling. Any other resources that you can think of or would like to
Yeah.
share before we wrap up?
If we're talking about people on Instagram, I believe Days with Gray, and I think it's Grey, is I can't remember her name, but she does this thing called morning invitations. And
Awesome.
like now that my kids are older, if I do a morning invitation, that means they walk in and I've got a piece of paper and I've drawn a circle and I'm like, build on this circle. Just have something ready for them to wake up and fall into. It sets a tone for our day, and she gives you hundreds of ideas and they're geared towards preschoolers. And I'm telling you, I do it with my teenager, I do it with my 9-year-old, and they love it. The Days with Gray, and then the Workspace for Kids. She does a lot of things about just making things available, keeping a pen, different colored pens and notebooks out on the table that her kids can stop and write in anytime, or keep like just bringing out blocks randomly, creating a home environment that just invites learning and the work of play, so
Yeah, I
they're
think
both
that's so
really good.
key.
Yeah.
Oh, I love both of those. Sound great. I
Yeah.
don't follow either one. I'm going to go
No.
do that right now.
Yeah.
I think the work of play is a great place to end on. I
Sure.
think if we can take homeschooling and think of it as an opportunity to play with our children
Mhm.
in a way that's going to encourage learning, because we know play is a child's work,
Yeah.
and we can have a playful attitude about it, because often it's our expectations of what needs to get accomplished and we get
Yeah.
frenzied and then our kids get frenzied. But if we can have that playful attitude about it, not 100% of the time, let's be realistic, but more than not, then I feel like at the end of the day we will look back with very few regrets. That's
Yeah.
what I want. I don't want us to have
I know.
done all of this job of homeschooling and then at the end we're like, why did we choose that?
Mhm.
And I think often parents say that, and some have said it. I think it's because of those expectations of trying to recreate what was in the school system.
Yeah.
So let go of that, find your tribe,
Yeah.
dig into some of these great resources, book a coaching session with you, Rachel,
Yeah.
and I think they won't regret it. And they'll be so glad they made this choice of homeschooling. And
Mhm.
also, lastly, it might just be for a season. You might
Yeah.
not homeschool the whole time. You might just be homeschooling for a year or 3 years.
Mhm.
Either way, it's beneficial to you and your family, in my opinion.
Yeah. Absolutely.
All right. Thanks so much, Rachel. I love talking to you and hearing look at you being the one to give advice. I love it so
Thank you
much.
so much, Kathy. It really is an honor. I really appreciate being here.